Poetry is kind of like Shakespeare's default language. What he does is he writes in verse. When we say in verse, he writes to a very kind of particular kind of verse form that we call blank verse. What's blank verse? Blank verse is basically a very set rhythm of patterns across a line. It only goes so far, then the next line continues. So the idea is you get one line, then the following line, and it kind of carries on down like that. So like all poetry, if you look at it on the page, the left-hand margin will be straight, the right-hand one will be jagged, because as it were, you're kind of pressing a hard return between different lines. Now, blank verse as a form follows a very, very regular setup. It's kind of broken into kind of 5 what scholars, technicians call metrical feet, which basically means 5 individual patterns of syllables, and the rhythm of the line goes dee-dum, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the kind of basic rhythm. And what Shakespeare does is more or less, he borrows that actually from Marlowe, originally, one of the first writers to write in so-called blank verse. Shakespeare kind of takes that on, refines that, and that's just the kind of normal language of the stage. It's a bit like, we're used to the fact that, sort of say film or television uses language that doesn't sound quite like real life speech. It's exactly the same for Shakespeare, except he's following this very, very rigid form. I mentioned it's called blank verse. Why is it blank? It's blank because it doesn't normally rhyme. That's what that kind of technical term means. Now, having said all that, Shakespeare is such a kind of brilliant and kind of restless writer that he doesn't just settle for kind of just regular rhyme. So if you think of what's the most famous Shakespearean line of all? To be or not to be? That is the question. Okay, well, let's work it out. To be or not to be, that is the question. Oh, 11, not 10. Not 10 as you'd expect, 11. It's kind of what you call hypermetrical. It's kind of one line over. So Shakespeare's always kind of, he has that as a kind of basic form, but he's continually experimenting with it. So that is blank verse.